Welcome everyone to the video. The topic today is a part 2 for the Akira Toriyama review in caps lock for whatever reason. Best art. Pretty much in this series I choose 5 great pieces, and usually these pieces chosen are ones that I like, so this list of course is subjective, but I still try to choose illustrations that represent elements of their work they are most known for, like over-the-top poses or movement and minimalism. And before we get this video underway, the featured artist is y.sly.dbz. I'm sure he would appreciate the support, and here's some great work. I really dig the composition of this Piccolo piece here with the cape flying back into the camera, and the coloring is great too as well. And this Namek Saga Vegito, really cool work, and if you'd like to seize on the chance to feature in a video, use this hashtag and tag me on Insta. So now to our first piece, quite a classic and was used for Akira Toriyama The World, and one element that I love is the movement, which is amplified through the gesture of both the dinosaur and Goku. With the dinosaur, he has his head turned with one foot in the air, meanwhile Goku is sort of hunched over with his foot kind of floating in the air, which also gives the gesture a loose feel. For example, if both legs were just like glued to the saddle, well, it kind of wouldn't communicate that feeling of a bouncy ride as much and would detract somewhat from the movement. And the same thing goes for the canteen flying off the back. Again, by utilizing a simple item such as this, once again it reinforces the impression that these characters are moving, and Toriyama is a master of this. You'll see this over the course of a lot of his work when characters are riding a creature or vehicle especially. The coloring is also something a little different. Usually Toriyama does a lot of cell shading, at least in his older work, where he uses a lot less hard edges and does a lot of blending, which is very well done. And he has done an excellent job in depicting the texture of various elements like the clothing, saddle, and the dinosaur skin, especially with all this intricate line work, meticulously detailing the scales. Overall, I really like Goku's outfit, and especially how Toriyama gave both him and the dinosaur motocross goggles. Really cool and unique. Up next, I included this one because in the first video from this series, I put out the request to mention a favorite illustration by Toriyama that you, the viewer, might have, and this one got top comment, and that is the chapter cover for Trunks the Story, The Lone Warrior. And it succeeds in visually representing the story to come in the chapter and the tone of it, and also does a great job of representing the character of Trunks within one image, which I believe is the reason why many people liked it. Because when I think of Trunks, at least from his portrayal in DBZ, it was that he is a lone warrior who comes from a hellish timeline of destruction, and as I said, this illustration kind of sums that story up all in one. Trunks is centered at the top of this rocky formation without any other characters by him, of course, which gives a feeling of isolation and even loneliness. The destroyed and abandoned city in the background represents the harsh environment that this character comes from. The expressions and body posture further give a somber feel, like he is contemplating his past, which is a recurring theme throughout this arc. And I can't believe I only just realized this now, but this illustration also has several other interesting story elements in it if you have read the chapter, although I only had read this chapter once prior to this video, so that's perhaps why I didn't see it sooner. But this is exactly where he was training with Gohan, as seen in the following pages, a rocky cliff overlooking a partially destroyed city, and was the last place he was with Gohan before he died. And it seems that he has returned many years later, perhaps after defeating the androids, to reminisce on the days where he once trained with his mentor, which is quite clear by his expression and body language. And from a design and technical standpoint, it displays a clear focal point by the isolation of the character, in contrast to the more detailed background, and his placement around the center of the picture plane also assists in drawing your focus instantly to him. And so we are not focusing just on Dragon Ball illustrations, because he has of course done a lot of great work outside the series. I thought this piece from Chrono Trigger deserved a place in the list. So the first element that I usually like to point out quite often in these is the movement, the journey your eyes taken on throughout an illustration or painting. And within this one, it is quite a simple path, but this is how it works. So this character here, due to being placed closest to us, the viewer, she instantly grabs our attention first, or usually would for most of us, and through her body language and the position of a pistol, we follow the path and come across these two characters, and then to the villain who is in the sky. What also brings in your focus and emphasis on these set of characters without getting lost in the background is the contrast of color. The background is made up of 3 predominant tones, a burgundy red, taupe, which is a dark greyish brown, and khaki. And so one, by utilizing quite a simple and consistent color scheme for the entirety of the background, and a quite drab and desaturated one at that, it makes the characters who have quite a more complex and bright color schemes therefore stand out from it, as well as also creating unity. Up next is a particular favorite of mine from the Buu arc, which was chosen for the cover of the Dragon Ball Z complete box set of the manga, but I really like the composition of how Goku, Gotenks, and Gohan are all grouped together side by side in one picture and are fighting off the version of Buu that they each predominantly fought. And the expressions, but more so on the different forms of Buu, are excellent, especially Super Buu. I love how dramatic and exaggerated he is. And what is really satisfying is the high level of contrast between light and shadow, a lot of interesting and abstract shapes for the highlights especially, just a really solid piece. Then finally, to finish it off, I thought it would be appropriate to include something from Dragon Quest, which of course is another series he has worked decades on. And it is a cover for a remake of the third Dragon Quest game released on the Super Famicom, and again quite a simple piece, but I like the composition of the hero kneeling down, looking straight ahead with his sword by his side, with a kingdom in the background. I've always enjoyed the trait of heroism, especially when implemented into a medieval fantasy setting, and this illustration really kind of personifies that for me. Furthermore, from a technical standpoint, he has done quite an excellent job with the colouring. Usually his style of colouring is quite simple and refined, which I like, but it is interesting to point out when he has added some extra details. Like with this one, he has done more blending rather than sticking to cell shading, and has added some bounce light from the reflection of the clothing on the sword, as well as tones of brown on the shield from the rocks, and finally this blue rim light. It's even more interesting because the style of colouring here is very close to the style he would use for his future digital illustrations, and I believe it's some of the last traditionally coloured work he would do for the Dragon Quest series, and in general really, as he would switch over to digital the following year, that being 1997. But back to this piece, I like the choice of drawing the background within a circle rather than just a full illustration. It adds interest to the piece without dominating it and taking focus away from the main character here. And finally, I'll add, even though I haven't played this game, it is one of those covers that definitely makes me want to, and it also leaves me wondering why Toriyama was never really commissioned to do a cover for a Dragon Ball game, especially since he is quite experienced in that field. But with that final piece, I'll end the video here. Thank you all for watching, and if you like this sort of content and you've made it this far, I mean, you may as well subscribe. And with that, I'll see you next time.